Why don't you take a seat and tell me what appears to be the problem? Welcome to another exciting new episode of Consult the Doctor, where I answer viewer questions. I opened up Instagram to questions, and I selected some that I think require longer answers, and I can devote an entire video to those, and others I think are shorter answers, so I can bundle them into a Consult the Doctor episode. Been a while that I did one, but I think these are fun to do, so I hope you think that too. The first question is a very nice and concise one. Visconti 23K Palladium versus 18 karat Nibs, question mark. Visconti used to do steel and gold nibs, then they did palladium nibs for quite a while, and then they did gold nibs again. The palladium nibs came in different generations, and what I have always found remarkable about those nibs is that they're 23 karat palladium. If they were pure palladium, it would be 24 karat. So 23 karat means there is almost no room for another metal in that alloy, because that means that 24th parts in that nib are palladium. So only 1/24th part remains. And yet there was an enormous amount of variation in those palladium nibs. Some were very flexible, even though I don't believe they were ever meant as flex nibs, and people flex them quite hard. I have done this in the past. There is no accusation here. Others were stiff, and I still find it fascinating because in my mind it was sort of the same, what do you call that, template that they used to make these nibs. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was thickness or thinness or things that I didn't really consider. But they seem to be exactly the same shape. So then what remains is usually thinner tines are flexier, or you're dealing with a very thin nib. So I mean, like longer tines are flexier because there's, you know, they end up being thinner, or the whole nib itself is thinner and then it also flexes more. I don't know exactly what it was. My biggest issue with the palladium nibs was that a lot of them had a lot of issues, whether that was hard starting, whether that was skipping, whether that was just having terrible flow that was really hard to fix. So a lot of people I've talked to over the years have shared stories where they had to send palladium nibs back to get them to write, or send them to Nibmeisters. Now, I know that people send all kinds of nibs to Nibmeisters, but I do feel anecdotally, which is a terrible source of information, but anecdotally it certainly felt like the palladium nibs had a disproportionate number of issues. What made it so frustrating was that when they wrote well, they were absolutely fantastic, very smooth, very soft, yielding, could be very wet, really, really, really nice to write with. But on the outside, you couldn't necessarily see if it was a good nib or a bad nib. So that was a bit of an issue. And since, I mean, Visconti doesn't do them anymore. I don't know of any other companies that do palladium. You have titanium nibs. It's a very different sensation when you write with them than the palladium. You have the gold, of course, 14, 18 karat, sometimes 21 karat. You have the steel nibs. I think that's pretty much it. They don't do them anymore. The palladium is out, so we don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about whether you can get one, because you can't. But if they wrote, they were fantastic. But that was the issue, if. So that was that. I'm assuming the question was, if you were to have the choice, what would you pick? Well, that really depends. If it was a well-writing palladium nib, I've had some in my time. I don't think I have any left. In fact, I'm pretty sure I don't have any left. If they wrote well, fantastic, superb, stellar, beautiful, magnificent nibs. But if they didn't, massive pain, and because they were so soft, they were hard to adjust. So I'd take gold. My Visconti Speakeasy came with a palladium nib. I've replaced it with a gold nib, a Visconti gold nib, and I'm happier with it, to be honest. It's more consistent writing experience. Harder, more rigid, but more consistent. Next question. Montblanc 146, leaking from piston. I'm assuming that what we mean, and I don't have a 146 here, but I have something that looks like it. Should have taken that out before I started to record, sorry. Something like it. I'm assuming we mean it's leaking from this end and not from the nib end, because they probably would have written nib leaking. If the piston leaks, there are a couple of things I think that could be going on. Somehow it seems like you're getting ink behind the piston. Think about it. Here we have the pen, we have the barrel, and then there is a piston seal that's probably somewhere here now. And then you turn this, and then the piston moves forward, and you put in a bottle of ink, and you turn this the other way, and then it moves backwards. So if ink is coming out of that end, ink is making it past the seal. Once upon a time, in vintage Montblanc pens, those seals were made of cork. And cork can become brittle, and bits can break off, and ink would quite easily make its way into the back end, and then you're kind of stuck. You would have to get someone to either sell you a replacement cork seal, or you have to make one on your own. With cork you can do, because you can cut cork, or you can get something else, a nylon seal or whatever, but then you're really replacing parts, obviously. What else could happen if it's not a cork seal? If it is, I don't know what they use, plastic or nylon, whatever, but what they use for the seal, maybe it's rubber, I don't know. But someone's sitting there thinking, oh my god, he doesn't even know. No, I don't know. But whatever they use, if that seal is not perfect anymore, that can become a problem, and ink could make its way past. What I have had in the past was, I think the first 149, 146 I bought with a crack, and I knew it had that crack in it. It was near the end, and the seller said it doesn't leak. And indeed, it did not leak if you filled it up, and that's probably how she tested it. If you would do this, there would be no ink coming out. But when you wrote with it, as the pen warmed up, some ink would be squeezed out the back. But then you should be able to see some sort of crack, fissure, tear in the back end of the barrel. The question is, what can you do about it? Well, you should send it to Montblanc, but they're going to charge you just to look at the pen, then they're going to charge you to take it out of the box, and then they will charge you to repair it. So I mean, it's going to be a costly affair. But it is Montblanc. It's their pen. They will do a good job in fixing it most of the time. I've never really heard any complaints of Montblanc not doing the job. The complaint typically is it's expensive, because they really make you pay for everything. It's still under warranty, but I'm assuming it's not. If it is, then there's no problem. Send it to Montblanc. If not, what you could do, and I have disassembly line videos for the Montblanc 146 and 149, you can buy a wrench. You can buy this in different spots. You can find it on eBay. I would be surprised these days if you cannot find that on something like AliExpress. That'll fit in the back of the pen. It'll have little teeth, and you'll put them in, you rotate it, and then you get it. But they use a type of adhesive, Montblanc I mean, and if they see that that's broken because it has a specific color, then you void your warranty. So if you want to do that, you do so in your own peril. Having said that, the advantage is once you have that wrench, you can just take the pen apart. You could put a bit of silicone grease around the piston seal, as I show in the disassembly line video. Index on my website. You can do it yourself. But you have to be willing to do that. And bear in mind, precious resin is fairly fragile. So be careful, go slow, take it easy. You don't want to crack parts of your pen with that wrench, and that can absolutely happen. So, at your own risk, he said, from a legal perspective. There we are. Okay, the next question, I got several variations of this question, is what do you think the impact will be of tariffs on fountain pens? How many are made elsewhere, or parts elsewhere? So let me say this immediately. I am not an economist. So I'm going to try to give a rational answer, but I'm not an economist, and I could be wrong. I also don't mean to make it political. So I'm just going to say there are tariffs. and people will have feelings about that. I certainly do, but there we are. Those tariffs tend to kick in when goods are imported over a certain value. So if you were to buy a single $50 pen and it's made somewhere, let's say China, for example, and you import that into the US, you wouldn't necessarily have to pay tariffs, as I understand it. If, however, you buy $800 worth of those pens, then that's a different story. And if you import materials and they're over a certain value, you'd also pay tariffs. That's how I understand the situation. But again, I'm not an economist. If you are a small pen company, maybe if you need to import materials, you can do that in such a way that you stay under that sort of level of price so that tariffs are not applied. But if you are a larger company, you may import a lot at the same time, and then I doubt you'll be able to stay under that. I think it's, again, $800. That's not a lot when it comes to materials. So will we see an impact? Yeah, I think we're already seeing an impact. We're seeing all kinds of impacts. The price of gold is higher than it's been in a long time, if I understand reports correctly. Again, I'm not an economist. So several companies have already indicated the price of our gold nibs is going to go up. We cannot afford to keep making nibs or offer them at the price we've been offering them. So there you are, right? You're already seeing the effect and I'm not saying that's tariffs, but I mean, that's an effect of market prices. I think with tariffs, you're definitely going to see it. It's going to be harder to import certain things, and let's be fair, with a fountain pen, it's not super difficult to get to something that's $800 or more. So I think people will experience the effects of that. And I think when it comes to importing the raw materials for pens that some pen companies use, you're also going to see it, and then the consumer is going to pay, right? Because if the person importing the goods pays the tariff, so they're going to charge you the extra cost that was incurred, because that's how that works. Even as a non-economist, I understand that point, but not everybody does. So yes, you'll see it and you'll feel it. Now, if it's going to double the prices of pens, I doubt that, but you're going to see it. Let's leave it at that. Let's talk about the final question. I enjoyed this question. What would be a Sith Lord's favorite pen? Well, the answer to me is glaringly obvious. It would be this pen, because it is the Darth Vader pen. Cross made a couple of Star Wars pens. Schaefer made some. Those are pretty cheap. I know people prefer the word inexpensive. In this case, I will go for cheap. They're plastic. They're painted. You know, it's colorful plastic. It's fun. They're fun. I have one. It's fun. But they're on the cheaper end of the spectrum. Doesn't mean they're not nice. I'm just saying they're cheaper. Then you have the cross pens. They made Townsends, which are thinner. I don't have mine right on arm's length reach, but those are quite nice. I have their Boba Fett pen because I had to. But then they made the Peerless, and they only made the Darth Vader, as far as I remember. It's beautiful. It has Darth Vader's chest panel on the barrel. It has his helmet on the cap, which is very hard to see and capture well with the light, but it is there. It has the sort of lacing of his boot on the clip. It has a lot of detail. It has the ribs that are on his armor. On the barrel. I think it's his shoulder piece. I don't remember. Anyway, that's there. And then of course it has a red little gemstone in the cap finial for his lightsaber, right? Beautiful pen. I sometimes feel it would have been even cooler if the nib had been black too, but that's fine. Fantastic writer, and it's all metal, so it has a nice weight without being colossally heavy. I love using it posted too. And it's a Sailor nib, so it's a really, really nice writer. This is a fantastic pen, and if all their Star Wars pens were like this, I would be very tempted to buy more. I got this one from Joost Appelboom. If you don't know the story, I did the review in a Darth Vader outfit, and I could keep the pen. I mean, challenge me to something like that. I'm not going to say no, am I? This is a Sith Lord's pen, and it's just delicious. And the fact that it's metal too, it just adds something to it. Really, really neat pen. So there you have it, Sam. Okay. That was Consult the Doctor for today. If you have any other questions, leave them below and I will try to get to them as soon as I can. I hope this was useful and I'm glad to see you later. Bye!